Hi, I'm Danny Ecker with the Chicago Business Today Midday Report. Regulators have closed 41 Chicago area banks since 2009, and virtually no new ones are taking their place. It's the reality of a shrunken community banking industry, with those that have stuck around trying to forge a niche among big names like PNC, Northern Trust, and others that dominate the landscape. Some local banks are throwing in the towel while others remain optimistic. Our Steve Daniels spoke with two local lenders with very different opinions about what's ahead.
We don't think that the community banking prospect in general is dismal. We just think it's dismal in Chicago.
Chicago area community banks were hit harder than their larger competitors in the recession. Many have failed. Most of the ones remaining are struggling to carve out an identity in a shifting banking landscape. Tim Goodsell, longtime CEO of Hyde Park Bank on the city's south side, opted last month to sell his bank, in part because he's bearish on the industry's future. He says there are too many banks in Chicago, and the industry here needs a shakeout.
The Chicago market, number one, is vastly overbanked, and it is dominated increasingly by large institutions, so that we were really afraid that we were going to be, scraping for crumbs, particularly on the asset side. The fundamental underpinning of the community bank is the franchise, that you have some type of community grounding that provides you with a relatively inexpensive deposit base and allows you to kind of go through periods of stress, without having to worry about money running out the door and creating a liquidity crisis. Good credit, good borrowers, strong borrowers, they'll always be able to find credit. What's going to fall off the table, I think, are the more kind of tough deals. The character loans, for example, that characterized community banks for many years. I think those will be very hard to get done. We felt it was more than just a timing thing. We think that there's been a paradigm shift here that's based on capital considerations, accounting, and regulatory response that we don't think is going away anytime soon. And we think that bias toward risk management, extreme risk management, is going to really disadvantage smaller institutions like ours. I've made a joke that this is no longer a business for free people. It's so heavily regulated, it's so dictated to by political elements now that I wouldn't advise anybody who wanted to create a business career to go into this industry. It's just not going to be there.
Mr. Goodsell has thrown in the towel, and experts predict many more will follow. But some bankers still are fighting. Peter Hallius is chairman of Bridgeview Bank Group, which has 15 branches in the city and suburbs, including a landmark building in Uptown. His bank hasn't turned a profit in several years, but he is optimistic nonetheless about his industry's future.
There's room for good community banks that stick to the knitting, stick to what they do best, and perhaps get specialized in a certain areas. I think community banks will have to have some kind of niche to extrapolate additional income in order to keep competitive. I think that the regulatory burden is increasing and will force some consolidation. I'm not convinced it'll be the widespread, consolidation where we'll only have 3 or 4 banks left. I just, believe too much in the spirit of this country, and I don't think that will happen. The community banks offer choices in a way to compete with the larger banks. I think there's a lot at stake. It's choices for the consumer and for the commercial borrower. Right now, if there are no choices and we only have a bank of a few, we've seen what that environment looks like in Europe. I absolutely think community banking will continue to be vibrant in the Chicago marketplace. I think, again, the entrepreneurial spirit that pervades in most of these organizations, there are some really good people doing some really interesting things, and I think that will bode well for the future of the environment. Remember, we've just gone through, I think, the roughest 5 years since the Great Depression economically, so I'm truly a believer in the future of community banking.